The confession slipped out during the harvest moon, when the wheat fields glowed silver and Benjamin Lawson stood alone on his porch with a jar of whiskey he had not opened, staring at hands that had not touched another person with tenderness in a decade. He had not meant to say it aloud, but the orc woman crouched in his barn loft with an arrow wound in her shoulder had asked him why he flinched whenever she came too close, and the truth emerged like water from a cracked well. "I haven't held anyone in 10 years, Benjamin admitted, setting the jar down on the weathered railing. The words hung in the cool autumn air between them, raw and unadorned. Grusha had been hiding in his barn for 3 days. She was a scout from the Ironjaw clan, caught on the wrong side of the border when a skirmish erupted between her people and the human militia from Settlers Ridge. The arrow had punched through the muscle of her left shoulder, and infection had set in by the time she stumbled into his property under cover of darkness. Benjamin had found her collapsed near his chicken coop, her green skin pale with fever, her breathing shallow. He should have turned her in. Every farmer within 50 miles would have done exactly that. Orcs were the enemy, had been since the border wars started 15 years ago. But Benjamin had seen enough of war during his 5 years in the king's army, enough blood and enough dying, and when he looked at the wounded woman sprawled in the dirt, all he saw was someone who would not survive the night without help. So he had carried her to the barn, laid her in the loft on clean straw, and spent the next 2 days draining the wound, packing it with herbs his mother had taught him to use, and forcing broth between her lips whenever she was conscious enough to swallow. She had not thanked him. She had not spoken at all until the fever broke on the 3rd evening. Now she sat on the bottom step of his porch, her injured arm bound against her chest in a sling he had fashioned from an old shirt. The moonlight caught the angles of her face, the proud line of her jaw, the small tusks that curved up from her lower lip. Her hair was black as coal, braided back from her face in thick plaits woven with leather cord. She wore the practical clothing of a scout, leather breeches, a sleeveless tunic that had been cut away to tend her wound, boots reinforced with metal plates. 10 years is a long time, Grusha said. Her voice was lower than most human women, rough around the edges like stones in a riverbed. Why? Benjamin leaned against the porch post, crossing his arms over his chest. He was a tall man, broad through the shoulders from years of farm work, with brown hair that had started to show gray at the temples, though he was only 33. His face was weathered from sun and wind, creased at the corners of his eyes from squinting at distant horizons. He wore simple clothing, wool trousers, a linen shirt rolled to the elbows, boots that had been resoled twice. "My wife died," he said simply. "Fever took her the winter after I came home from the war. By the time I got back from town with the physician, she was already gone. I held her while she was dying, and I have not touched another person that way since." Grusha was quiet for a long moment. She studied him with eyes the color of amber, sharp and assessing. "You were a soldier. I was. You fought my people." "I fought whoever they told me to fight," Benjamin said. "I am not proud of it. When my service ended, I came here, bought this farm with my discharge pay, and I have not raised a weapon since except to hunt deer. Yet you helped me." "I did." "Why?" Benjamin considered the question. He had asked himself the same thing a dozen times over the past 3 days. "Because I am tired of war," he said finally. "Because you were dying on my land and I could not stomach the thought of leaving you there. Because maybe I wanted to prove to myself that I am still capable of something other than being alone." Grusha pushed herself to her feet, moving carefully to avoid jarring her injury. She climbed the steps until she stood in front of him, close enough that he could smell the herbs from the poultice he had applied that morning, mixed with the scent of leather and something earthier, like turned soil after rain. She was nearly as tall as he was, which made her tall for an orc woman, and her shoulders were broad with muscle. "Thank you," she said. "For my life." Benjamin nodded, unsure what to say. The moment stretched between them, heavy with things unspoken. Then Grusha reached out with her good hand and touched his arm, just a brief contact of her fingertips against his forearm. The touch was tentative, questioning. He did not flinch away. "You should rest," Benjamin said, his voice rougher than he intended. "The wound is healing, but you need time." "I should leave," Grusha countered. "Every day I stay puts you in danger. If the militia finds me here, they will hang you as a traitor. Let me worry about that. Why should you risk your neck for me?" "Because it is my neck to risk," Benjamin said. He met her eyes steadily. "You are not well enough to travel. Another few days, at least, before that shoulder can handle the strain. Stay until then." Grusha studied his face as though looking for deception. Whatever she saw there seemed to satisfy her, because she nodded slowly. "A few more days," she agreed. "But no longer. I will not have your death on my conscience, Benjamin Lawson." She turned and walked back to the barn, her movements still stiff with pain. Benjamin watched her go, feeling the ghost of her touch still warming his skin. The next morning dawned clear and cold. Benjamin woke before sunrise as he always did, built up the fire in the hearth and put coffee on to boil. He was halfway through his first cup when Grusha emerged from the barn, moving slowly across the yard. She had fashioned her sling more securely, and color had returned to her face. "There is coffee if you want it," Benjamin called from the porch. Grusha climbed the steps and accepted the cup he poured for her. She drank it black, grimacing slightly at the bitterness but not complaining. They stood together in silence, watching the sun climb over the eastern hills and paint the wheat fields gold. "What do you grow here?" Grusha asked. "Wheat mostly, some barley and oats. Vegetables in the garden behind the house. I keep chickens and 2 cows. It is enough for one person." "You do all the work alone." "I hire help for harvest, but otherwise yes." Grusha nodded thoughtfully. "In my clan, everyone works the fields together. Even our warriors take turns at planting and harvest. It is considered shameful to let others do your share of the labor." "How did you become a scout?" Benjamin asked. He was curious despite himself, wanting to know more about this woman who had stumbled into his life. "I was always fast," Grusha said. "Good at moving quietly, good at reading tracks and signs. When I was 16, the clan scoutmaster took me as an apprentice. I have been ranging the borderlands for 7 years now." "You have family in your clan?" "My mother, 2 brothers, a sister. My father died in a raid 5 years ago." She said it matter-of-factly, without self-pity. "What about you? Any family?" "My parents are dead. I had a brother, but he died in the same campaign where I took a sword to the thigh. No other blood relatives that I know of." They fell quiet again. Benjamin found the silence comfortable rather than awkward, which surprised him. He had grown so used to being alone that he had forgotten what it was like to simply exist in the presence of another person without needing to fill every moment with words. "I should check your wound," Benjamin said eventually. "Come inside where the light is better." His house was small but well maintained. A single main room that served as kitchen and living space, with a bedroom and storage room off to one side. The furniture was simple and functional, most of it made by his own hands. Grusha sat in the chair near the fire while Benjamin carefully unwrapped the bandages from her shoulder. The wound looked better. The angry red of infection had faded to pink, and the swelling had gone down considerably. He cleaned it with boiled water and honey, then applied a fresh poultice of yarrow and comfrey. Grusha sat still through the process, her jaw tight but no sound of pain escaping her lips. "You have gentle hands," she said, when he began wrapping clean bandages around her shoulder. For a former soldier. My mother was a healer, Benjamin said. She taught me before she died, said every person should know how to tend wounds and treat sickness because you never know when such knowledge will save a life. She was wise. She was. Benjamin tied off the bandage and stepped back. Grusha rolled her shoulder experimentally, testing the range of motion. She winced but nodded approval. It feels much better, she said. You did good work. It will still be tender for a while. Try not to use that arm too much. I will be careful. Over the next few days, they fell into an unexpected routine. Benjamin went about his daily work on the farm, and Grusha helped with what tasks she could manage one-handed. She scattered grain for the chickens, gathered eggs, weeded the garden with meticulous patience. He protested at first, told her she should be resting, but she waved him off. I am not accustomed to idleness, Grusha said. Let me be useful. So he let her help and found himself grateful for the company if not the labor. They talked while they worked, small conversations about nothing in particular at first. Grusha told him about her clan's territory in the mountains to the west, about the long houses where families lived together, about the great fires where stories were told on winter nights. Benjamin talked about his childhood in a village 3 days' ride to the south, about learning to farm from his father, about the books his mother had taught him to read. You can read? Grusha asked, surprised. Can you not? Few among my people know letters, she admitted. We keep our histories in songs and stories, passed from elders to young ones. That evening, Benjamin brought out one of his precious books, a collection of old tales he had bought from a traveling merchant years ago. He read aloud while Grusha listened, her eyes wide with wonder at the magic of words preserved on paper. When he finished the first story, she begged for another, and he read until his voice grew hoarse and the fire burned low. On the 5th day of her stay, disaster nearly struck. Benjamin was in the barn mucking out the stalls when he heard horses approaching on the road. He dropped his pitchfork and moved to the barn door, his heart hammering. 3 riders were coming up the path to his farm, 2 militia men and Gareth Chen, who served as the local magistrate. Grusha, Benjamin hissed. Hide. Now. She was already moving, climbing the ladder to the loft with impressive speed despite her healing shoulder. Benjamin watched her disappear into the hay, then walked out to meet his visitors with what he hoped was a casual expression. Gareth, he called in greeting. What brings you out this way? Gareth Chen was a thin man with suspicious eyes and a mouth that turned down at the corners. He had made himself important during the border conflicts by rooting out anyone who showed sympathy to orcs, and he wore his authority like armor. Morning, Benjamin, Gareth said, not dismounting. We are searching for an orc scout that was wounded in the skirmish 6 days ago. Rangers tracked her heading east. Last trail led toward this area. You seen anything unusual? Cannot say that I have, Benjamin lied smoothly. Been keeping to myself same as always. What did this orc do? Does not matter what she did, one of the militiamen said. Matters that she is an orc on our side of the border. Standing orders are to capture or kill on sight. Benjamin nodded as though he agreed completely. Well, I will keep my eyes open. If I see anything, I will ride into town and let you know. Gareth studied him with narrow eyes. Mind if we take a look around, just to be thorough? Every muscle in Benjamin's body tensed, but he forced himself to shrug. Look all you want. I got nothing to hide. The magistrate and his men dismounted and began searching the property. Benjamin followed at a distance, trying to appear unconcerned while his mind raced. If they checked the loft carefully, if they saw the blood-stained bandages he had buried behind the barn, if Grusha made any sound at all. One of the militiamen climbed into the barn loft. Benjamin held his breath, counting the seconds that felt like hours. Finally, the man climbed back down, shaking his head. "Nothing up there but hay and mouse droppings," he reported. They searched for another 10 minutes before Gareth seemed satisfied. "All right, Benjamin. Sorry to bother you. But keep alert. That orc could be anywhere, and wounded animals are dangerous." "I will be careful," Benjamin promised. He stood watching until the riders disappeared back down the road. Only then did he return to the barn and call softly up to the loft. Grusha emerged from beneath a pile of hay, bits of straw clinging to her hair and clothes. Her face was pale, but her expression was calm. "That was close," Benjamin said. "Too close," Grusha agreed. "I need to leave tonight." "Your shoulder is healed enough," she interrupted firmly. "I cannot stay here. You heard them. They are actively searching for me. The next time they come, they might bring dogs. I will not let you hang because you were kind to me." Benjamin wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. Every day she stayed increased the danger. "All right," he said quietly. "Tonight, then. I will pack you food for the journey." They spent the day in tense preparation. Benjamin filled a pack with dried meat, hard cheese, flatbread, and a flask of water. He gave her a spare cloak to replace her torn scout's gear and a small knife for protection. Grusha accepted it all with quiet gratitude. As the sun set, they stood together on the porch one final time. The autumn air was sharp with the promise of coming winter. Grusha shouldered the pack carefully, testing the weight against her healing shoulder. "Which way will you go?" Benjamin asked. "West, back toward the mountains. It is 3 days hard travel, but I know the paths. I will make it. I wish I could." Benjamin trailed off, unsure how to finish the sentence. What did he wish? That he could go with her, that she could stay. That the world was different enough to allow such impossible things. Grusha looked at him, and something shifted in her expression. "Benjamin," she said softly. "In my culture, when someone saves your life, you owe them a debt that can only be repaid in one of 3 ways, through service, through blood, or through bonding." "You owe me nothing," Benjamin said. "I did what anyone should do." "But most would not have done it," Grusha said. "You are not like other humans I have known. You are kind. You are gentle. You read to me from your books, and you made me laugh when you told stories about your chickens. I have been thinking about what you said, about not holding anyone for 10 years. I have been thinking that maybe I would like to be held by you, if you would want such a thing with someone like me." Benjamin's breath caught in his throat. He stared at her, searching her face for any sign of jest or obligation. But her amber eyes were serious, and there was a vulnerability in her expression he had not seen before. "You would want that?" he asked. "With a human." "With you," Grusha corrected. "I do not care what species you are. I care that you are good and decent, and that when you look at me you do not see a monster. That is rarer than you know." Benjamin took a step closer to her. His heart was pounding so hard he was certain she could hear it. "I do not see a monster," he said. "I see someone brave and strong and beautiful in ways I do not have words for." "Then hold me," Grusha said, "before I have to leave. Hold me so I can remember what it feels like to be valued." He closed the distance between them and wrapped his arms around her, carefully mindful of her injured shoulder. She was solid and warm against him, her head tucking perfectly beneath his chin. He felt her good arm come around his waist, her hand splaying flat against his back. They stood like that for a long time, just breathing together, just being together. "I do not want you to go," Benjamin whispered into her hair. "I do not want to leave," Grusha whispered back. "But I must." They pulled apart slowly, reluctantly. Grusha's eyes were bright with unshed tears. She reached up and touched his face, her palm rough and warm against his cheek. "Maybe when the war ends," she said. "Maybe someday things will be different." "Maybe," Benjamin agreed, though he did not believe it. Grusha stepped back, shouldered her pack, and walked down the porch steps. She paused at the edge of the yard and looked back at him one final time. "Goodbye, Benjamin Lawson," she called. "Thank you for giving me back my life." "Goodbye, Grusha," he said. "Travel safe." He watched until she disappeared into the darkness beyond his fields. Then he went inside, poured himself a drink from the jar of whiskey he had never opened, and sat by the fire thinking about how it had felt to hold someone again after so long alone. The days that followed were harder than Benjamin anticipated. He had grown accustomed to Grusha's presence with shocking speed, and her absence left his small house feeling emptier than it had before she arrived. He threw himself into his work, harvesting the last of the wheat and preparing the fields for winter. He told himself he would forget about her eventually, that she was just a brief interruption in his solitary life. But 3 weeks after Grusha left, everything changed. Benjamin woke in the deepest part of night to the sound of something hitting his door. Not a knock, more like a body slamming against wood. He grabbed the hunting knife he kept beside his bed and moved cautiously to the main room. "Benjamin," a voice gasped from outside. "Please, it is Grusha." He flung the door open. Grusha collapsed across the threshold, and by the light of the moon he could see blood soaking through her clothing. Not just her own blood, he realized with horror. She was covered in it. "Help me," she whispered. "Please." Benjamin dragged her inside and kicked the door shut. He lit lamps with shaking hands and quickly assessed her injuries. A deep gash across her ribs, another on her thigh, dozens of smaller cuts. But the blood covering her belonged mostly to someone else. "What happened?" he demanded, already moving to heat water and gather his medical supplies. "My clan," Grusha panted, her face twisted with pain. "They found out I stayed with a human, called me traitor. They said I was corrupted, that I brought shame. They would have killed me, but I fought my way free. I had nowhere else to go. I am sorry. I should not have come back here. I just—" "Hush," Benjamin said firmly. "You did right to come here. Let me work." He spent the next 2 hours cleaning and stitching her wounds. The gash on her ribs was deep but had missed anything vital. The one on her thigh had nicked muscle but would heal clean if he could prevent infection. Grusha gritted her teeth through the worst of it, only occasionally letting a groan escape. When he finished, Benjamin helped her into his bed and covered her with blankets. She was shaking with shock and blood loss. He built up the fire until the room was warm, then made strong tea and forced her to drink it. "They cast you out?" he asked quietly, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Worse," Grusha said. "They declared me clanless. In orc culture, to be clanless is to be dead. I have no people now. No home to return to, no family who will acknowledge me." Her voice broke on the last word, and tears began sliding down her face. "I lost everything because I told them the truth, because I was fool enough to say that maybe not all humans were enemies." Benjamin reached out and took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "Then stay here," he said. "With me." Grusha looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. "You do not mean that." "I do," Benjamin said, and he realized it was the absolute truth. "Stay here, help me work the farm. We can figure out the rest as we go. The magistrate will come back eventually. When he does, then we will deal with it when it happens," Benjamin interrupted. "But I am not turning you away. You came to me for help and I will give it for as long as you need." "Why?" Grusha asked. "Why would you risk everything for me?" Benjamin squeezed her hand gently. "Because in the 3 weeks since you left, I have thought about little else but you. Because my house felt wrong with you gone. Because I think maybe we were meant to find each other, and I am not wise enough to ignore something like that." Fresh tears spilled down Grusha's cheeks. "I thought about you too," she whispered. "Every day. I told myself I was being foolish, that it was just gratitude, but—" She trailed off, unable or unwilling to finish. "Rest now," Benjamin said softly. "We can talk more when you are stronger." He stayed beside her until she fell into exhausted sleep. Then he cleaned up the bloody cloths and medical supplies, banked the fire, and settled into his chair to keep watch. He would not sleep tonight, he decided. He would stay alert in case Grusha's former clan had followed her here. But the night passed quietly, and dawn broke clear and cold over the farm. Grusha's recovery took longer this time. The wounds were more serious, and the emotional trauma of being cast out by her clan weighed on her heavily. For the first few days she barely spoke, just stared at the ceiling with haunted eyes. Benjamin tended her wounds and brought her food, but otherwise gave her space to process her grief. On the fourth day, she finally asked for one of his books. He read to her for hours, and slowly the light began returning to her eyes. On the sixth day, she insisted on getting out of bed, though she moved stiffly and had to lean on him for support. They sat together on the porch, wrapped in blankets against the November chill, watching the bare trees bend in the wind. "Tell me about your wife," Grusha said suddenly. "If it is not too painful." Benjamin was quiet for a moment, considering. He had not spoken about Emma to anyone in years. But something about Grusha's directness made it easier. "Her name was Emma," he said. "Emma Fletcher before we married. We grew up in the same village, knew each other as children. When I came back from the war, we married quickly. I think she knew I was broken from what I had seen, and she thought her love could fix me. But I was too locked up inside myself, too haunted by the things I had done. We had less than a year together before the fever took her." "You still love her?" Grusha asked without judgment, just curiosity. "I will always love her memory," Benjamin said carefully. "But I have accepted that she is gone. For a long time I thought that meant I should spend the rest of my life alone, that it would dishonor her memory to move on. But lately I have been thinking that maybe Emma would have wanted me to find happiness again. Maybe she would have wanted me to live instead of just existing." Grusha reached over and took his hand. "I think she would want that too." They sat in comfortable silence, their hands joined, watching the sun track across the sky. Benjamin realized with a start that he felt content for the first time in a decade. Not happy exactly, not yet, but content. As though some fundamental piece of himself that had been missing had finally clicked back into place. "Benjamin," Grusha said eventually, "what are we going to do? I cannot hide in your house forever. Eventually someone will see me." "I have been thinking about that," Benjamin admitted. "The border has been quiet lately, no major skirmishes in months. Maybe people are tired of fighting. Maybe they would accept—" "They would never accept this," Grusha interrupted gently. "You know they would not. If the magistrate finds out I am here, he will hang you as a traitor and kill me as an enemy." "Then we leave," Benjamin said. "Pack up what we can carry and head west into the wilderness. Find somewhere remote enough that no one bothers us. You would give up your farm. This land you worked so hard for." "I would give up anything to keep you safe," Benjamin said simply. Grusha turned to look at him fully, her amber eyes wide with emotion. "You barely know me." "I know enough," Benjamin said. "I know you are brave and kind and loyal. I know you make me laugh. I know that when you are near, the world feels less cold. That is enough for me." "It should not be," Grusha said, but there was no conviction in her words. "This is madness." "Maybe," Benjamin agreed. "But I have lived the sensible life, the cautious life, the life where I do what I am supposed to do and feel nothing. I do not want that anymore. I want to feel something, even if it is dangerous, especially if it is dangerous." Grusha laughed, a short, surprised sound. "You are either very brave or very foolish, probably both." She leaned her head against his shoulder, careful of her injuries. Benjamin wrapped his arm around her, holding her close against the cold. They stayed like that until the sun set and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. That night, Grusha moved from the bed to join Benjamin by the fire. They sat together on the rug he had woven years ago, their backs against the worn couch, shoulders touching. The contact felt natural now, easy. "In my clan," Grusha said quietly, "there is a bonding ceremony. When two people wish to tie their lives together, they stand before the clan at dawn and speak vows to each other. The dawn represents new beginnings, the chance to start fresh. They bind their wrists together with a cord woven from their own hair, symbolizing that they are now joined as one unit, one family." "That sounds beautiful," Benjamin said. "I cannot have that ceremony now," Grusha continued. "No clan to witness it, no elders to bless it. But I find myself wanting it anyway, wanting to bind myself to you in whatever way I can, even if it is not recognized by my people or yours." Benjamin turned to look at her. "Are you asking me to marry you?" "I am," Grusha said, meeting his eyes directly. "I know it is fast. I know it is foolish. But I have lost everything else. My clan, my family, my homeland. You are the only thing I have left, and I would rather claim you properly than continue in this uncertain state. Will you have me, Benjamin Lawson? Will you bind your life to mine, knowing the dangers it brings?" Benjamin's heart felt too large for his chest. "Yes," he said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you. I will bind my life to yours. Dawn or midnight or any hour in between, I am yours if you will have me." Grusha smiled then, a real smile that reached her eyes and made her beautiful in a way that stole his breath. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his, a gesture he remembered her explaining was how orcs showed deep affection. "Then we will marry at dawn," she said. "Just the two of us. We will speak our vows to each other in the sky, and that will be enough." They spent the rest of the night talking about everything and nothing, making quiet plans for a future that felt suddenly possible. Benjamin told her about the cabin he knew of 2 weeks' travel west, deep in the mountains where no human settlements existed. It had belonged to a trapper who died years ago, but the structure would still be sound. They could make a life there, away from judgmental eyes. Grusha talked about teaching him to hunt the way her people did, about the herbs and plants that grew wild in the mountains, about how they could live off the land if necessary. She talked about wanting a garden like his, about maybe keeping goats instead of cows since they handled mountain terrain better. They talked until the sky began to lighten in the east, that deep blue that comes before true dawn. Then they stood together and walked outside, their hands joined. The November morning was bitter cold, their breath fogging in the air. Frost covered the fields in a silver blanket. Benjamin led Grusha to the small rise behind his house where he had buried Emma all those years ago. It felt right somehow to make his new vows in sight of the old. "Emma," he said quietly to the simple wooden marker, "I hope you understand. I hope you would be happy for me. I will always remember you, but I am ready to move forward now. Thank you for the time we had." Grusha squeezed his hand gently, offering silent support. They turned to face each other as the sky began to turn pink and gold. Benjamin took both of Grusha's hands in his, looking into her face as the dawn light painted her green skin with colors of fire and honey. "I do not have formal words," he said. "But I vow to you, Grusha of no clan, that I will stand by your side for all the days I have left. I will protect you, provide for you, and cherish you. I will be your family when you have none. I will be your home when you are lost. I will hold you when you need holding, and I will give you space when you need freedom. I am yours, completely and without reservation." Grusha's eyes shone with tears, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "I vow to you, Benjamin Lawson, that I will stand by your side for all the days I have left. I will guard your back, share your burdens, and honor you. I will be your family, your clan of two. I will be fierce in your defense and gentle in your moments of pain. I will hold you when darkness comes, and I will walk beside you in the light. I am yours, completely and without reservation." Benjamin reached up and carefully plucked a few strands of hair from his own head, then gestured for Grusha to do the same. She pulled several long black strands free. Working together, they twisted the hair into a rough cord, braiding it as best they could. When it was done, Benjamin wrapped it around their joined wrists, binding them together palm to palm. The cord was fragile, would not hold against any real force, but it was symbolic, sacred. "By my word and will," Benjamin said softly. "By my blood and bone," Grusha answered. They stood like that as the sun finally broke over the horizon, spilling golden light across the frost-covered fields. Benjamin leaned forward and kissed her, gentle and reverent, pouring everything he felt into that contact. Grusha kissed him back with equal tenderness, her free hand coming up to cup his cheek. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling. Benjamin carefully unwound the cord from their wrists and handed it to Grusha. She tucked it carefully into the pocket over her heart. "We should leave today," she said, turning practical, "before the magistrate decides to pay another visit." "Agreed," Benjamin said. "I will pack what we can carry. We should reach the foothills by nightfall if we move quickly." They spent the morning in organized chaos, gathering supplies and making decisions about what to take and what to leave behind. Benjamin packed his medical supplies, his best tools, seeds saved from the harvest, warm clothes, and blankets. Grusha insisted on bringing several of his books, arguing they would need entertainment during the long winter evenings. Benjamin saddled his horse, an aging gelding named Barley who had served him faithfully for years. They could pack most of their supplies on Barley and take turns riding when the terrain allowed. Benjamin locked the house for the last time and stood looking at his farm, memorizing it. "Any regrets?" Grusha asked, standing beside him. "None," Benjamin said firmly. "This was just a place. You are home now." They set out heading west as the sun reached its peak. The first day of travel was slow going. Grusha was still healing and they had to stop frequently for her to rest. But she never complained, just pushed herself to keep moving. That night they made camp in a sheltered hollow and built a small fire. Benjamin made stew from dried meat and vegetables while Grusha tended to Barley. They ate in comfortable silence, then curled together under the blankets as the temperature dropped. "Tell me a story," Grusha requested, her head pillowed on Benjamin's shoulder. "One of the ones from your books." So Benjamin recited from memory, telling her tales of adventure and magic, of heroes and monsters, of love that conquered impossible odds. Grusha listened with closed eyes, her breathing deep and even. By the time he finished, she had drifted off to sleep. Benjamin lay awake a while longer, listening to the night sounds of the wilderness and feeling the solid warmth of his wife against his side. His wife. The word still felt strange, but it was a good kind of strange, a hopeful kind of strange. They traveled for 12 days before Benjamin began to worry they were being followed. He noticed broken branches that looked too fresh, boot prints in soft earth that were not made by his own feet or Grusha's. On the 13th day, he was certain. "Someone is tracking us," he told Grusha when they stopped at midday. "At least 2 people, maybe more. They have been keeping their distance, but they are definitely following." Grusha's expression hardened. "The magistrate, most likely. I am sorry. I thought we had more time." "Do not apologize," Grusha said firmly. "We knew this was a possibility. Can we outrun them?" Benjamin considered. Not with Barley carrying this much weight and not with you still recovering. We are maybe 3 days from the cabin. We could try to reach it and fortify, but if they have enough men. Then we make a stand here, Grusha said. Choose the ground, set the terms. You are in no condition to fight. I can still swing a blade well enough, Grusha countered, and I will not run any more. I am tired of running. Benjamin studied the surrounding terrain with the eye of someone who had once been a soldier. They were in a narrow valley with steep sides, heavy with pine trees. There was a spot about 100 yards ahead where the valley narrowed even further, barely wide enough for 2 horses to pass abreast. There, he said, pointing. We can set up a choke point, funnel them in where numbers do not matter as much. They spent the next hour preparing. Benjamin felled 2 trees across the narrow point, creating a barrier that would force anyone coming through to dismount and climb over. He set snares in the underbrush, nothing lethal but enough to tangle feet and create confusion. Grusha, despite her protests, he positioned behind a boulder with instructions to stay hidden and only reveal herself if absolutely necessary. Then they waited. The sun was westering toward evening when the magistrate and his men finally appeared. Benjamin counted 6 riders, all armed with swords and crossbows. Gareth Chen sat his horse at the front, his face twisted with righteous anger. Benjamin Lawson, the magistrate called out. You have committed treason by harboring an enemy of humanity. Surrender yourself and the orc, and your death will be quick. Resist, and we will make you suffer. I have committed no treason, Benjamin called back, standing his ground before the barrier. I have simply extended basic human decency to someone who needed help. If that is treason, then I do not recognize your authority to judge it. Human decency, Gareth spat. That thing you are protecting is an orc, a monster. They killed my brother in the border wars, or have you forgotten? They have killed hundreds of our people. And we have killed hundreds of theirs, Benjamin shot back. The cycle of violence has to end somewhere. Why not with us? Pretty words from a traitor, one of the militia men sneered. Step aside or we will cut you down. I have taken a stand here, Benjamin said quietly. And I will not move. You want to get to my wife, you go through me first. Your wife? Gareth looked genuinely shocked. You married that creature. You really have lost your mind. Maybe, Benjamin allowed, but it is my mind to lose. Gareth gestured to his men. Take him. The militia men dismounted and advanced on foot, drawing their weapons. Benjamin drew his own blade, the old army sword he had kept wrapped in oilcloth at the bottom of his pack. He had sworn never to use it again, but sometimes oaths had to be broken for the right reasons. The first man to reach the barrier tried to climb over. His foot caught in one of Benjamin's snares and he fell hard, cursing. The second man was more careful, but as soon as he cleared the barrier, Benjamin was on him. They traded blows, steel ringing against steel in the quiet valley. Benjamin's muscle memory took over, the old training coming back despite years of disuse. He disarmed his opponent and kicked him back over the barrier, but 3 more were coming now, spreading out to flank him. Benjamin backed up, his shoulders against the stone wall of the valley, his sword up and ready. He knew he could not hold against 3 trained fighters. This was the end then. At least Grusha would have a chance to escape in the confusion. Then Grusha was there beside him, seemingly appearing from nowhere. She held a heavy branch like a club, her injured arm pressed tight against her side, but her good arm strong and steady. I told you to stay hidden, Benjamin said. I do not follow orders well, Grusha replied. Did you forget that? The militia men hesitated, seeing the orc woman standing ready to fight despite her obvious injuries. Gareth rode closer, his crossbow raised and aimed at Grusha's chest. Stand down, orc, he commanded. This does not have to end in more bloodshed. You are the one who came hunting us, Grusha said calmly. We were leaving, asking nothing from you or your people. You could have let us go in peace. You are an enemy, Gareth said. Enemies do not get to live in peace. Then we will die fighting, Grusha said simply. But we will take some of you with us. Is that what you want, to lose men over something that does not concern you? One of the militia men shifted nervously. Sir, maybe we should just let them go. They are headed west into Orc territory anyway. They will probably die out there without our help. Silence, Gareth snapped. We have our duty. Your duty is to protect your community, Benjamin said. We pose no threat to anyone. We just want to be left alone. You pose a threat to the natural order, Gareth insisted. Human and orc are not meant to mix. It is an abomination. Who decided that? Grusha asked. Your priests, your laws, what makes your way the only way? Gareth did not answer. He simply pulled the trigger on his crossbow. The bolt flew straight and true, aimed directly at Grusha's heart. Benjamin moved without thinking, putting himself between the bolt and his wife. The impact hit him high in the chest, punching through muscle and scraping bone. He went down hard, the world tilting sideways. Benjamin! Grusha's scream seemed to come from very far away. He saw her drop beside him, her hands pressing against the wound, her face twisted with panic and grief. I am all right, he tried to say, but only blood came out. Then chaos erupted. The militiamen surged forward, and Grusha rose to meet them with a roar that echoed off the valley walls. She swung her makeshift club with devastating force, catching one man in the knee and dropping him instantly. She grabbed his fallen sword and whirled to face the next attacker, her movements fluid despite her injuries. Benjamin tried to get up, tried to help, but his body would not obey. He could only watch as his wife fought like a demon, holding off 3 armed men through sheer ferocity and desperation. She was magnificent, terrifying, beautiful in her fury. Then something amazing happened. One of the militiamen stepped back, lowering his sword. I am not doing this, he said loudly. I did not sign up to murder a man and his wife for the crime of loving each other. Get back in line, Gareth ordered. No, sir, the militiaman said firmly. This is wrong. I am done. Another man lowered his weapon. Tom is right. This is not what we are supposed to be protecting people from. Let them go. Gareth looked around frantically, seeing his authority crumbling. You are all cowards, traitors. We are humans with consciences, Tom said, something you seem to have misplaced. Come on, boys. Let us ride back and tell the council we lost their trail in the mountains. The militiamen began backing away, some helping their injured comrade who was still clutching his shattered knee. Gareth sat frozen on his horse, his face purple with rage but clearly outnumbered now. This is not over, he hissed at Grusha. I will see you hunted to the ends of the earth. Then you will die tired, Grusha said coldly. Now leave before I forget my vows and send you to whatever hell awaits men like you. Gareth wheeled his horse and galloped away, the remaining loyal man following. The others, led by Tom, gave respectful nods before mounting up and riding off in a different direction. As soon as they were gone, Grusha dropped back to Benjamin's side. She ripped open his shirt, exposing the crossbow bolt protruding from his chest. Her hands shook as she examined the wound. How bad? Benjamin gasped. Bad, Grusha admitted. The bolt is deep. If I pull it out, you might bleed to death. If I leave it in, infection will kill you. Then pull it out, Benjamin said. Do it quick. Grusha grabbed the bolt shaft with both hands. This is going to hurt. I know. She pulled, and Benjamin's world dissolved into white-hot agony. He might have screamed, he was not sure. When his vision cleared, Grusha had packed the wound with cloth torn from her own shirt and was wrapping it tight to slow the bleeding. Stay with me, she commanded. Do not you dare die on me, Benjamin Lawson. Not after everything. I am not going anywhere, Benjamin promised, though even he could hear how weak his voice sounded. Grusha got him onto Barley through sheer determination and strength, then led the horse by the reins while supporting Benjamin in the saddle. They traveled through the night, Grusha pushing forward with grim determination. Benjamin drifted in and out of consciousness, aware only of pain and movement and Grusha's voice constantly urging him to hold on. When dawn broke on the second day after the attack, Benjamin woke to find himself lying on a real bed in a small cabin. Sunlight streamed through a window, illuminating dust motes in the air. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it as pain lanced through his chest. "Lie still," Grusha ordered, appearing at his side. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes and her clothes stained with blood. "You are not healed yet." "Where are we?" Benjamin croaked. "The cabin you told me about, we made it. Barely." She held a cup of water to his lips and he drank gratefully. "I have been changing your bandages twice a day and keeping the wound clean. No sign of infection yet, but it is early still." "How long?" "You have been unconscious for 3 days, Grusha said. "I was starting to think you would not wake up." Benjamin reached out and took her hand, threading their fingers together. "Takes more than a crossbow bolt to get rid of me." Grusha laughed, the sound cracking into something like a sob. "Do not joke about that. I thought I lost you. When that bolt hit and you went down, I thought." She could not finish. "I am here," Benjamin said softly. "I am here because you got me here, thank you." "You took that bolt for me," Grusha said, tears streaming down her face now. "You stepped in front of it without hesitation. You could have died." "But I did not," Benjamin pointed out. "I had a good healer looking after me." Grusha bent and pressed her forehead to his, that orc gesture of affection he had come to cherish. They stayed like that for a long moment, just breathing together, reassuring themselves that they were both alive and together. "I love you," Grusha whispered. "I do not think I have said that yet, but I do. I love you, Benjamin. I love you too," Benjamin whispered back. "From the moment I found you in my barn, I think. I just did not recognize it until later." They stayed in the cabin while Benjamin healed. Grusha proved to be remarkably resourceful, hunting rabbits and grouse with snares she fashioned from wire, gathering edible plants she recognized from her training as a scout, fixing gaps in the cabin walls to keep out the growing winter cold. Benjamin helped where he could as his strength slowly returned, but mostly he watched his wife work and marveled at how lucky he was. The cabin was small, just one room with a stone fireplace, a sleeping loft, and a small attached shed for Barley. It was remote, nestled in a high valley that was accessible only by a narrow game trail. The nearest human settlement was weeks away in any direction, and orc territory began 2 days' ride to the west. "We could spend the winter here," Grusha said one evening as they sat by the fire. "Build up our supplies, give you time to fully heal. In the spring we can decide if we want to stay or move deeper into the mountains." "What about your clan?" Benjamin asked. "Is there any chance of reconciliation?" Grusha shook her head. "Once clanless, always clanless. They would kill me on sight now, same as the humans would. We are on our own, you and I." "A clan of 2, Benjamin said, remembering her words from their wedding vows. "A clan of 2, Grusha agreed, smiling. "That is enough for me." The winter came on hard that year, with heavy snows that blocked the trail and temperatures that dropped low enough to freeze water solid in minutes. But inside the cabin, Benjamin and Grusha were warm. They spent the long evenings reading by firelight, Benjamin teaching Grusha her letters while she taught him words in the orc tongue. They talked about everything and nothing, learning each other's histories and dreams. Grusha told him about her childhood in the long house, about learning to track and fight, about the day she earned her scout tattoos. Benjamin told her about growing up in a quiet farming village, about the horrors of war that still haunted his dreams, about Emma and the complicated grief that came with loving and losing. "Does it bother you?" Benjamin asked one night. "That I still think about her sometimes?" "No," Grusha said honestly. "She was part of making you who you are. I do not want you to forget her. I just want to be the one you are choosing now." "I choose you," Benjamin said firmly. "Every day I choose you." They made love for the first time during a blizzard that howled around the cabin. It was awkward at first, both of them nervous and unsure despite being married. But they figured it out together, learning what brought each other pleasure, laughing at mistakes and celebrating discoveries. Afterward they lay tangled together under every blanket they owned, listening to the wind scream while they stayed warm and safe in their little sanctuary. "I am happy," Grusha said wonderingly. "I did not think I would ever feel this way again after losing my clan, but I am happy." "Me too," Benjamin said, kissing the top of her head. "For the first time in 10 years I am happy." Spring came eventually, the snow melting to reveal new green growth. Benjamin's chest wound had healed to a raised pink scar that ached when the weather changed, but otherwise he was back to full strength. They planted a garden in the cleared space behind the cabin, using the seeds Benjamin had brought from his farm. Grusha found a small herd of mountain goats and managed to domesticate 3 of them, giving them a source of milk and cheese. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. They worked together during the day, tending the garden and the goats, hunting and gathering, improving the cabin. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch they had built together and watch the sun set over the mountains, planning for a future that seemed less uncertain with every passing day. One morning in late spring, Grusha woke Benjamin with a serious expression. "I need to tell you something," she said. Benjamin's stomach dropped. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong," Grusha said quickly. "At least I do not think it is wrong, but I am." She paused, seeming to gather her courage. "I am pregnant. I am going to have a baby, our baby." For a moment Benjamin could not process the words. Then joy crashed over him like a wave. He sat up and pulled Grusha into his arms, holding her tight. "A baby," he said, his voice cracking. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Grusha asked tentatively. "I know we did not plan this." "I know it complicates things." "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Benjamin said fervently. "This is the best news you could have given me. We are going to be a family. A real family." Grusha relaxed in his arms, relief evident in her posture. "A real family," she echoed. "A clan of 3. They spent the summer preparing for the baby's arrival. Benjamin built a cradle from pine wood and lined it with soft furs. Grusha sewed tiny clothes from cloth they traded for at a distant trading post, the only settlement that asked no questions about a human and orc traveling together. They gathered supplies and made plans, both nervous and excited. The baby came in autumn, just as the leaves were turning gold. Grusha's labor was long and difficult, and there were hours when Benjamin feared he would lose her. But she was strong, his wife, stronger than anyone he had ever known. When the baby finally arrived, tiny and perfect and wailing at the top of her lungs, they both cried tears of joy and relief. "A daughter," Grusha said wonderingly, holding the infant to her chest. "We have a daughter." The baby had green-tinged skin, softer than Grusha's but definitely present. She had tiny nubs where tusks would grow eventually, and pointed ears that lay flat against her head. Her eyes, when they opened, were the same warm amber as her mother's. She was beautiful, this child who was both human and orc and entirely their own. "What should we name her?" Benjamin asked, running a gentle finger over his daughter's soft head. "I was thinking." Grusha hesitated. "Would you mind if we named her Emma, after your first wife? She is part of your story and I would like to honor that." Benjamin felt his throat close with emotion. You would do that. She was important to you, Grusha said simply, and I think she would be happy to know that something good and new carries her name forward. Emma it is then, Benjamin agreed. Emma Lawson. Emma Lawson Ironjaw, Grusha corrected with a smile, claiming her place in both worlds. Little Emma grew quickly, thriving in the mountain air and the love of her parents. She learned to walk early, toddling around the cabin with determined focus. She learned words in both human common tongue and Orcish, switching between them without thought. She was fearless and curious, constantly getting into things she should not and keeping her parents on constant alert. When Emma was 2 years old, they had unexpected visitors. Benjamin was working in the garden when he heard horses approaching. He grabbed his sword and moved to intercept, his heart pounding. But when the riders came into view, he recognized Tom, the militiaman who had refused to fight them that day in the valley. Tom raised his hands peacefully as he dismounted. Easy, Benjamin. We come in peace. We. Benjamin asked warily. 3 other men dismounted, all former members of the militia. They looked older, harder, but not hostile. What do you want? Benjamin demanded, not lowering his weapon. To apologize, Tom said simply, and to bring news. The war is over. Real treaty signed, not just another temporary truce. Human and Orc territories have been formally recognized, and there is going to be actual trade and diplomacy instead of raiding. Benjamin stared. You are lying. I am not, Tom said. It happened 3 months ago. Both sides finally got tired of dying for land nobody really wanted anyway. The magistrate, Gareth Chen, he got himself killed trying to start another skirmish after the treaty was signed. Turned out, nobody wanted to follow him into another pointless fight. He died alone. Grusha emerged from the cabin with Emma on her hip. The little girl stared at the strangers with wide eyes but no fear. Is it true? Grusha asked. The war is really over. It is really over, Tom confirmed. He looked at Emma and his expression softened. Is this your daughter? She is, Benjamin said, moving to stand beside his wife. Emma, she is 2 years old. She is beautiful, Tom said sincerely. Both of yours, anyone can see that. He looked between Benjamin and Grusha. We came because we wanted you to know you can come home if you want. To Benjamin's farm or to any human settlement, the laws have changed. Interspecies families are protected now under the treaty terms. You would not have to hide anymore. Benjamin looked at Grusha. She looked back at him, a whole conversation happening in that glance. Thank you, Benjamin said finally, but I think we are home right where we are. You do not want to come back. Tom seemed surprised. We built something here, Grusha explained. Something that belongs only to us. We are happy, safe. Why would we leave that? Besides, Benjamin added, someone needs to be a bridge. Maybe other families like ours will need a place to go, a place where they can just be themselves without judgment. We can be that place. Tom nodded slowly, understanding. That makes sense. Well, the offer stands if you ever change your mind. And if you need anything, supplies or tools or whatever, you send word to Settlers Ridge and we will make sure you get it. Consider it our apology for hunting you in the first place. That is generous, Benjamin said. Thank you. The men stayed long enough to share a meal and meet Emma properly. She warmed up quickly once she realized they were friends, chattering at them in her mix of languages and showing off her collection of interesting rocks. By the time they left, Benjamin felt lighter than he had in years. The threat that had hung over them was finally gone. They could live their lives in peace. That evening, after Emma was tucked into bed, Benjamin and Grusha sat on their porch watching the stars emerge. We really did it, Grusha said softly. We made it work. We did, Benjamin agreed. Against all odds. Do you ever regret it? Grusha asked. Giving up your farm, your old life, everything you worked for. Benjamin turned to look at his wife, this fierce orc woman who had stumbled into his life and changed everything. Never, he said firmly. That farm was just land. This, right here with you and Emma, this is living. This is what I was missing for all those years. Grusha leaned her head on his shoulder. I love you, Benjamin Lawson. I love you too, Grusha Lawson Ironjaw. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of the mountains, secure in the knowledge that they had found something rare and precious. A love that crossed boundaries, a family that defied categories, a home that existed not in any particular place, but in the space they created together. The years that followed were good ones. Emma grew into a bright, confident child who inherited her mother's courage and her father's kindness. They eventually had 2 more children, a son they named Thomas after the militiaman who had shown them mercy, and another daughter they called Sarah, after Benjamin's mother. The cabin expanded to accommodate the growing family, rooms added as needed, always a work in progress. Word spread about the family living in the high mountains, and they did become a refuge just as Benjamin had suggested. Other mixed families found their way to them, seeking advice or just a place where they could rest without judgment. Benjamin and Grusha welcomed them all, offering food and shelter and understanding. They became something of a legend in both human and orc communities, the farmer who married the orc at dawn and built a life from nothing but love and determination. Traders would bring stories of them when they passed through settlements, and gradually the story grew and changed in the telling until it was hard to separate fact from fiction. But the core truth remained. Benjamin Lawson, a widowed farmer who thought he would never feel anything again, had found love with Grusha Ironjaw, an orc scout cast out by her clan. They had married at dawn with only the sky as witness, and they had built a family that bridged 2 worlds. They had survived prejudice, violence, and impossible odds, and they had come out the other side stronger and more committed than ever. On the 10th anniversary of their wedding, Benjamin and Grusha woke early and climbed to the top of the ridge above their expanded homestead. They stood together watching the sun rise, just as they had a decade ago, their hands joined. 10 years, Benjamin said wonderingly. It has been 10 years. Best 10 years of my life, Grusha said, even with all the difficulties. Especially with the difficulties, Benjamin corrected. The struggles made us stronger. You ever think about that night in your barn? Grusha asked. When I was wounded and half dead and you could have turned me away. I think about it often, Benjamin admitted. I think about how close I came to making the safe choice, the easy choice. If I had been a little more afraid, a little less lonely, I might have let you die there, and then I would have missed all of this. I am glad you were lonely, Grusha said with a small smile. I am glad you were brave enough to take a chance on someone who looked like your enemy. You were never my enemy, Benjamin said. From the moment I saw you, all I saw was someone who needed help. The rest, the prejudice and the fear and the boundaries, that was all just noise. What mattered was that you were a person and you needed me and I could help. They stood in silence as the sun climbed higher, painting the mountains in shades of rose and gold. Below them, they could see their home, smoke rising from the chimney where the older children were probably starting breakfast. They could hear faint sounds of laughter, Thomas chasing Sarah around the yard while Emma tried to maintain order as the responsible oldest child. We did good work, Grusha said softly. Building this life, raising these children. We did good work. The best work, Benjamin agreed. They started back down the ridge together, hand in hand, ready to face another day in the life they had chosen. There would be challenges ahead still, there always were. But they would face them together, as they had faced everything else. Two people who should never have met, who should never have fallen in love, who should never have survived the forces arrayed against them. But they had met, and they had loved, and they had survived, and they had built something beautiful from the ashes of their former lives. That evening, after the children were in bed, Benjamin pulled out one of his books and began to read aloud as he had done on so many evenings before. Grusha sat beside him, her head on his shoulder, listening to the story unfold. When he finished the chapter, she looked up at him with those amber eyes he had come to love so completely. "Read me the one about the farmer again," she requested. "The one where he does not hold anyone for 10 years, and then he marries the orc at dawn." Benjamin smiled. "That is not a story from any book. That is our story." "I know," Grusha said, "but I never get tired of hearing it. Tell me our story, Benjamin. Tell me how we found each other." So Benjamin set aside the book and began to speak, telling the tale of how a wounded orc scout stumbled into a lonely farmer's barn, and how he saved her life instead of turning her in. He told of the confession under the harvest moon, of the dawn wedding with no witnesses but the sky, of the flight into the mountains, and the battle that nearly killed them both. He told of healing and building, of falling in love slowly and then all at once, of a family that defied every rule and expectation. He told their story, and Grusha listened with shining eyes, as though hearing it for the first time even though she had lived every moment. When he finished, she kissed him softly. "That is a good story," she said, "our story." "The best story," Benjamin agreed, "and it is not finished yet. We still have many chapters to write." "Many chapters," Grusha echoed, settling back against his side. "I am looking forward to every one." They sat together by the fire as it burned down to embers, two people who had found each other against all odds and built a life worth living. The wind howled outside, but inside the cabin all was warm and safe. Their children slept soundly in the loft above. Their future stretched out before them, uncertain in its details, but certain in its foundation of love and commitment. Benjamin thought back to the man he had been 10 years ago, alone and hollow, going through the motions of living without really feeling anything. He thought about the night he found Grusha in his barn and the choice he made to help her. It had seemed like a small thing at the time, just basic human decency, but it had changed the entire trajectory of his life. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" Grusha asked. "For stumbling into my barn that night, for giving me a reason to feel again, for choosing me when you could have chosen anyone." "I could not have chosen anyone," Grusha said firmly. "I could only choose you. You were the one who saw me as a person instead of a monster. You were the one who took a chance. You were the one who held me when I needed holding and who let yourself be held in return." "I had not held anyone in 10 years, Benjamin said, echoing his confession from that first night. "And then I held you, and I remembered what it felt like to be alive." "And then you married me at dawn," Grusha added with a smile. "And then I married you at dawn," Benjamin confirmed. "Best decision I ever made." They stayed up late into the night, talking about everything and nothing, making plans for the spring planting and discussing which of their children would inherit the homestead when they were gone. They talked about the families they had helped over the years and speculated about whether more would come seeking refuge and advice. They talked about growing old together, about grandchildren they might have someday, about a future that seemed bright and possible. Eventually, they banked the fire and climbed the ladder to the sleeping loft, where their children slumbered peacefully. They settled into their own bed, a large, comfortable thing Benjamin had built from pine logs, and fitted with a feather mattress Grusha had painstakingly sewn. They curled together as they always did, Grusha's head on Benjamin's chest, his arms around her shoulders, perfectly fitted together like pieces of a puzzle that had finally found their match. "Benjamin," Grusha murmured, half asleep already. "Yes, I am happy. In case I do not say it enough." "I am happy." "I am happy too," Benjamin said softly. "So happy." They drifted off to sleep like that, wrapped in each other and in the knowledge that they had found something infinitely precious. Love that transcended boundaries, family that defied convention, a home that existed wherever they were together. They had faced down prejudice and violence, had survived injury and exile, had built a life from nothing but determination and hope. And they had done it all because one lonely farmer had made the choice to help a wounded stranger, and that stranger had turned out to be his salvation. Because sometimes the person you least expect turns out to be exactly what you need. Because love does not care about species or expectations, or what the world says is possible. It simply exists, stubborn and fierce and undeniable, and if you are brave enough to reach for it, it can transform your entire world. As Benjamin drifted into sleep, his last thought was a simple one: gratitude. Gratitude that he had been given a second chance at happiness, gratitude that Grusha had stumbled into his life, gratitude that they had both been brave enough to take a chance on something impossible. The night deepened around the cabin in the mountains, the wind singing through the pines, the stars wheeling overhead in their eternal dance. Inside, a family slept peacefully, secure in the love they had built together. A farmer and an orc and their 3 children, proof that hope and courage and love could overcome any obstacle. Their story had started with loneliness and pain, with war and prejudice and fear. But it had transformed into something beautiful, a tale of redemption and second chances, of love that conquered hate, of a family built on choice rather than obligation. It was a story that would be told for generations, inspiring others to take chances, to be brave, to choose love over fear. And at the heart of it all was a simple truth that Benjamin had discovered that night under the harvest moon. Sometimes healing begins with admitting you need it. Sometimes love finds you in the least expected places. And sometimes the best decision you can ever make is to open your heart to someone who needs holding, because in holding them, you heal yourself. The farmer and the orc, married at dawn, building a life together against all odds. It was not the story either of them expected to live, but it was the story they had earned through courage and compassion. And as they slept wrapped in each other's arms, they both knew without question that they would not change a single moment of it, because every struggle and every triumph had led them exactly where they needed to be, together, home, happy.